Well, shalom, shalom. Welcome, welcome, world changers. And thank you, Hannah, for the beautiful music. That was beautiful, beautiful, as always. Thank you for blessing us with your talent. So tonight, we're going to finish up the Book of Ruth. We got chapters 3 and 4 we're going to talk about. And also after that, I do want to get into a little bit of a discussion before we leave the Book of Ruth about the possible background to the Book of Ruth. We all know and have understood, and many of us have just outright just accepted the Book of Ruth as it is, as you know, it was written just around in the period of the Judges. But some scholars believe that it was written later than that as a counter narrative to the Book of Nehemiah, that is, and the Book of Ezra. So we're going to look into a little bit of that as well before. I don't want to move on too fast here from the Book of Ruth before we cover it in as much detail as we possibly can here. So I pray that everything that we share here today would be a great blessing to you, increase your knowledge of the Scriptures, your knowledge of the things of heaven, your relationship with God, and your knowledge of the truth. Amen, amen, amen. All right. Well, yeah. So the outline of the night is going to go like this. We're going to have an critical thinking segment, as always, to begin with, and then we're going to get into the Book of Ruth, chapter 3 and chapter 4. And we have a study outline here that we're going to be reading as well along with that, like we did the past several nights. And then we're going to get into another little sub-study on the dating and perhaps the purpose of the Book of Ruth in the sight of many of the some of the scholars, I should say, just to give us a very well-rounded understanding of the Book of Ruth. Okay, well, let's see what we have here in the live chat before we get into it. And by the way, folks, if you have any prayer requests or anything of that nature, feel free to drop those in the live chat. Any praise reports, anything that we have prayed for and you've seen results, please let us know. Or if you haven't seen results, let us know as well, and we'll continue to pray, because this is what we're here for, to bless each other. In the live chat, we have Calamento says shalom to all. Chipmunk says shalom everyone. Al from Kick says shalom on Kick. Shalom everyone on Kick and YouTube. Mewa says shalom, shalom family. Seek the Lord says shalom. Mewa says thank you, Hannah. And Chipmunk says like this one a lot, Hannah. Well, shalom, shalom, welcome and blessings to y'all. Blessings multiplied to you and your families. Thank you, Mewa. Thank you, Chipmunk, on behalf of Hannah. Okay, well, let's get into the critical thinking segment for tonight. It is about poisoning the well. Poisoning the well. So, one of the most common and damaging traps our minds fall into is not a flaw in our logic, but a flaw in our loyalty. It's a mental shortcut that allows us to dismiss good ideas and accept bad ones without ever doing the hard work of thinking. The poisoned well. Imagine you're walking through a desert, dying of thirst, and you come upon two wells. Well number one has a sign next to it posted by your best friend that says, "This water is clean and safe." Well number two has a sign posted by someone you've been warned against, someone you deeply distrust. It also says, "This water is clean and safe." From which well do you drink? Instinctively, you rush to the first well and drink deeply. You wouldn't even dream of tasting the water from the second well. You've already declared it, quote unquote, poisoned. But what if your friend was honestly mistaken? And what if the person you distrust is in this one instance was actually telling the truth? By judging the source of the water instead of the water itself, you might have just chosen a contaminated well over a clean one. This is the genetic fallacy. It is one of the most powerful enemies of critical thinking, especially for someone who studies the scriptures. What is the genetic fallacy? The genetic fallacy is the error of accepting or rejecting an idea based on its origin, its genesis or source, rather than its own merits, its evidence and logic. Our brains love this shortcut because it's easy. It saves us the hard work of thinking. Instead of analyzing every single idea, we create simple lists of quote-unquote safe sources. Our in-group, our favorite teachers, our tradition, and quote-unquote poison sources, other traditions, secular scholars, rival groups. We then just accept or reject information based on which list the source is on. The problem is that truth can come from a poison source, and error can come from a safe source, a safe one. A true critical thinker is more loyal to truth than to their list. How the genetic fallacy cripples our study. In our study of the Bible, this fallacy shows up in two primary ways. Number one, the poison source rejection. This is the most common form. We encounter a powerful piece of evidence, a compelling argument, or a new interpretation, but we immediately find out where it came from. Oh, that interpretation comes from a secular university scholar. What could they possibly know? Dismissed. Or that historical fact was pointed out by a skeptic. They're just trying to attack the faith. Dismissed. Or that book is from a different theological tradition than mine. I'm not even going to read it. Dismissed. We poison the well. We assume that because we don't like the messenger, the message must be wrong. We fail to realize that a non-believing historian can still be an excellent historian. And their facts about the Roman Empire might be crucial to understanding a passage. Number two, the quote-unquote safe source acceptance. This is the reverse, and it's just as dangerous. We blindly accept an idea because it came from a source we love. Like, my favorite teacher taught this, so it must be right. I won't question it. Or, this doctrine is part of my tradition, so it is beyond scrutiny. Or, he is such a godly, sincere man, I will just accept his interpretation as correct. We confuse the good character of the messenger with the correctness of the message. This is how well-meaning people can pass on flawed interpretations for generations. They are drinking from a safe, quote-unquote, safe well that might in fact be contaminated. The antidote. A true critical thinker is a truth scavenger. They believe that truth is so precious that they are willing to find it anywhere, even in the quote-unquote trash heap of a source they despise. And they are humble enough to know that error can be found even in the quote-unquote palace of a source they love. How to practice this? Number one, create a mental firewall. Consciously separate the messenger from the message. When you hear a claim, put the source in a mental, quote-unquote, holding pen and let the idea itself stand on its own in the courtroom of your mind. Number 2, apply a universal standard. Have one and only one standard of evidence. Does the claim align with the primary text in its context? Is it supported by verifiable historical and linguistic data? Is the logic sound? This one standard must be applied equally to the ideas from your favorite teacher and the ideas from your worst enemy. Number 3, ask, is this water clean? Instead of asking, who posted the sign on this well? Ask the only question that actually matters. Is the water itself clean? Test the water. Taste it for yourself. This means doing the hard work of examining the evidence for every claim, no matter where it came from. Today's challenge, the genetic fallacy, is an act of intellectual laziness driven by a misplaced sense of loyalty. Critical thinking demands that our ultimate loyalty must be to God and His truth, not to any human teacher, tradition, or tribe. Your challenge for today is to practice being a truth scavenger. Find one argument, find one idea, argument, or piece of information from a source you would normally instantly dismiss. Your task is not to accept it. Your task is to apply the universal standard. Find one single point in their argument that is logical, true, or at least understandable on its own merits. This simple act of finding one pearl in a place you don't expect to find one is a powerful workout for your critical thinking muscles. Share the live stream, folks. Share. Let's get our family, friends, and coworkers and neighbors and enemies on board. By the way, folks, this coming Sunday is going to be a special meeting for the YouTube members. We're going to have our private video conference. I do have an announcement to make, so I'm gonna save it for you guys who are members first, and then I'll release it to the public after that. But for those of you who are members listening to this, if you can make it, if you will, please mark that on your calendar. That's this coming Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. That is, okay, 1 p.m. Eastern time. We'll have our YouTube members only video conference. Chipmunk says, this is a big one I see daily. Can always tell it's an issue when questions are asked in a certain chat and the supporters attack someone for just asking a question. If it has the slightest undertone of being against the main group, they can get attacked. Chipmunk says, right now in the crime world, there is a huge division between supporters, those against this one person and those that support them. Yeah, unfortunately, that's the way it is. You know, it's so easy to fall into this genetic fallacy, or the poisoning of the well. It's so easy. I know I myself have done it. Thank you for the likes over there on TikTok. Appreciate that. I myself have done it, and I hope that that we don't fall into it. But let's hope and pray that we can keep afloat, if you will. Thank you, Chipmunk. Cubert says, Shalom, Cuberts. Welcome and blessings multiplied to you and your family. Okay, yeah, so we got, let's see here. We're going to read the last couple chapters of Ruth, and then after that, we're going to get into a little bit of a sub-study, not really a lot, just a little bit of a little bit more into the historical dating of Ruth and into the possible purpose of Ruth being a written to counteract some of the extreme, or some of the, I got to be careful how I word this, written to bring balance to the book of Nehemiah and also the book of Ezra. We'll talk about this a little bit later, so we want to get into this. Hubert says, "The chipmunk, that happened to me when I was in a group that exclusively called Jesus Yeshua. I was new and I said, 'Praise Jesus.' You would think I cursed them. I cursed them out by the way they attacked me." Whoa. Wow. That's, yeah. Chipmunk says, "Wow, Hubert, that's a good example." Yeah, it is. Sorry to hear that you've experienced that. Yeah, so as y'all know, I'm not like that. As far as I'm concerned, you call Jesus Yeshua, Jesus, Isa, Iso, every variation of it, as long as it's, as long as it is at least somewhat historically accurate. I know you would say Jesus isn't. I get that, but one of the reasons why I say Jesus more than some other people is just for the sake of conventional speech. Like most people today know Jesus as Jesus, especially in the Western world. So we speak about that. I use it interchangeably. That way, cover all bases, right? Cover all bases. Hubert says, "I didn't even know Jesus was Yeshua at the time." Oh, okay, all right, yeah. Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that, Huberts. I can't remember when I found out about the Yeshua Hebrew variation of Jesus, or the Hebrew. You can say the Hebrew original, depending on how. Actually, I think really historically, it probably was more like Iso or Isa, something like that. Now that's assuming that he spoke and the disciples spoke Aramaic, because Yeshua is more of the Hebrew, not so much Aramaic. But if they did speak Aramaic, they probably would use something more like Yeshu, Isa, some variation of that. Isha, Isho, Ishu. I remember a few years ago, we used to have, there was, who was it that was on in the live chat? There was a dear gentleman who attended that watched the live, and he was from Turkey, and he was quite familiar with Aramaic, and he said, I think he said it was Iso. Yeah, Hubert says, "Left a bad taste in my mouth." Someone could have easily explained it. Yes, I totally understandable. Yeah, some people, I think it becomes more of an idol than, they make that into more of an idol than they should, in my opinion. Thank you for sharing that, Huberts. Voice of One, thank you for liking the live over there on TikTok. Appreciate that. Blessings. Okay, so yeah, we got a Book of Ruth, chapters 3 and 4. Ruth chapter 3. So, by the way, folks, this will be, Lord willing, everything goes well and smooth. I always say that because you never know what happens on you never know what can happen on a live stream. I know some of you, if you can remember the early days when we were live streaming, sometimes the whole system would just crash on me for no reason, and sometimes it would happen quite often. Thank God we don't have that nearly as much as we used to. We got better. Everything's better now. So, and thank you for those of you who support the channel as well. That really is what helps us to ensure that we can deliver the best quality to you. So yeah, back in the early days, it was like, some of you may remember that. It was like all of a sudden, boom, I'm gone. Like, oops, I don't know. Remember that one time? It was like several months before I finally figured out what was going on. It was one of those really, it had to do with actually like hardware acceleration in the browser, like something that you would never think of. It took a long time to figure that out. But anyways, Lord willing, that doesn't happen. We're going to go through the rest of the book of Ruth tonight. It was a short night last night. I expect somewhat of a short night as well tonight as well. And after we finish up chapter 4, I just want to kind of reiterate a little bit, kind of step back a little bit and talk once more about the possible alternate date on the book of Ruth and the alternate purpose of the composition of the book of Ruth. We'll get there, Lord willing, when we get there. Hubert says 100%, and Chipmunk says people get desensitized to what they know. At one time they learn something, then after time they assume everyone knows that info. Easy way to push someone away from something good. Yeah, unfortunately. Yes. Thank you, Chipmunk. Okay, here we go. Risk and redemption. Ruth chapters 3 and 4. Chapter 3, the encounter on the threshing floor. Chapter 3 is the dramatic pivot of the narrative. Naomi orchestrates a bold and culturally ambiguous plan to secure Ruth's future, requiring immense trust and courage. Okay, so we'll read chapter 3, verses 1 through 5. Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, my daughter, shall I not seek rest for you, that it may be well with you? Isn't now Boaz our kinsman, with whose maidens you were? Behold, he will be winnowing barley tonight on the threshing floor. Therefore wash yourself, anoint yourself, get dressed, go down to the threshing floor. But don't make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking." A little bit of visuals. So we got Naomi and Ruth, and it says in verse 4, "It shall be when he lies down that you shall note the place where he is lying. Then you shall go in, uncover his feet, and lie down. Then he will tell you what to do." She said to her, "All that you say, I will do." Verse 1, note, Naomi takes the initiative. "My daughter, shall I not seek rest for you, that it may be well with you?" Quote unquote, rest in the Hebrew, manoach. This refers specifically to the security and stability found within marriage and in a patriarchal society. Verses 2 to 4, the setting, the threshing floor. We spoke about this before. The threshing floor. Threshing floors were located outside the town on high ground to catch the evening breeze for winnowing. So it's like you would have, like if you have wheat, for example, you'd have the chaff, which would be the husks of the wheat kernels. And so you don't want to have that in the mix. You want to have the chaff was just like it's the waste, right? So the chaff is a lot lighter than the actual wheat kernel itself, or the wheat berry, if you will, itself. So you would toss the wheat up into the air, and the wind would naturally just blow the chaff away. which would be a way of, increasing the quality of your harvest and, in ensuring that you got all that chaff out of your wheat. Men often slept there to guard the harvest. While a place of celebration, its isolation made a venue associated with potential illicit activity or vulnerability. See Hosea chapter 9, verse 1. Naomi's plan is precarious. So let's go over and take a peek at Hosea chapter 9, verse 1. Do not rejoice, O Israel, with joy like other peoples, for you have played the harlot against your God, and you have made love for hire on every threshing floor. So this is, so this gives us a lot more of an understanding of the context here in the Book of Ruth, and also throughout the scriptures as well. We read a lot about threshing floors throughout the scriptures, so this gives us a lot more of an idea of exactly what it was, where it was, what kind of stuff was going on there. So men would sleep there, and it was a potential place of illicit activity or vulnerability. Maywa says, my homeboy Ermias, I'm watching and hopefully, is watching, and hopefully he'll get something out of tonight's and come back again. Yeah, absolutely, Maywa. Shout out to, I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Please help me if I'm not. All due respect to Ermias. Shout out to Ermias. Blessings. I pray that you get value out of this live stream tonight. Gibbor says, why does playing the harlot against your God? What does playing the harlot against your God mean? Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. So, the short answer would be idolatry. To idolize, to worship something or someone over God. So we're supposed to be like spiritually united with God, and to play harlotry with God would mean that you may think you're spiritually united with God, but no, you're spiritually united with maybe other gods, or false gods, or gods of your own making, if you will. There can be many. I know some people today, especially in the developed world, would think, well, what does this mean? What do you mean gods? We don't have, well, anything can be a god, right? I mean, money, material things, pleasure of any sort, when it's abused and taken out of its original purpose and context. Any of that kind of stuff can be an idol or a quote unquote god that a person could play harlot with. So they're not faithful to God in loving God with all of their heart, soul, mind, and strength. But they might love God, but maybe not with all of their heart, soul, mind, and strength. Maybe it's with most of their heart, soul, mind, and strength. But they love another God or gods instead. Or I should say also, not instead. So there's a little bit of a crash course into that, Cuberts. Thank you for asking. Maywa says, you're right. Okay, Ermias. Gibbor says, shalom, Ermias and Maywa. Yes, shalom. And Chipmunk says, good. Hope he enjoys it. Yes, I hope so too. Blessings, Ermias. Okay. Verse 3, we read this earlier. Ruth is told to wash, anoint herself, and put on her best clothing. So I'm reading the notes here in case you're wondering. Some people are listening to this on a podcast, so you don't really see what I'm reading. Right now I'm not reading the actual scripture itself, but we're reading the notes. Ruth is told to wash, anoint herself, and to put on her best clothing. Actions suggesting preparation for a significant encounter, perhaps even bridal preparation. This is a really good portrait of preparing yourself to meet God. It says, I get it why a lot of people would say this, but I think that it's okay. So certainly it could have its place sometimes, but most times I think it's really error in a way, and that is that the teaching that just come as you are. Like, just come as you are. Yeah, sometimes that can apply. I'm not going to throw a blanket statement over everything. Of course, sometimes that could apply. Sometimes that might be kosher. But I think many times it's not. I think if you can prepare yourself, I think that's what you should do. And how do you prepare? Well, you see, like Amos chapter 4, verse 12, therefore Israel that is what I will do to you, since I will do that to you, Israel, prepare to meet your God. If you don't prepare for a special encounter, isn't that kind of like a little bit disrespectful? I mean, it can, right? Can you imagine meeting with someone like a dignitary or royalty, even just in an earthly sense, and you don't prepare? Like you just jump out of bed, and you're just all, disheveled, and you're just, you're still wearing your pajamas and you go and meet a king or a queen or something. It may not be, the best way to do it. It may, you need to prepare yourself somehow. Or if you have somebody coming over to your place, some very dignified individual, VIP, you got somebody coming over to your place, you want to make sure you ask Mr. Clean to do his work a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Prepare is an act of respect, right? You're respecting the one you are about to meet. You're honoring by preparing. So if any of you are, if you're married, or if you're not married and you go to, or you think about the first time you ever dated your spouse, or let's say you're going to date somebody who may become your spouse, and you don't do anything to prepare, I think that might not be the best case scenario. So in the same way, we need to prepare to meet God. I think it's important. Not just come as you are, but prepare. So we see this in the Book of Ruth, chapter 3, verse 3. So she's told to wash, anoint herself, and put on her best clothing. Actions suggesting preparation for a significant encounter, perhaps even bridal preparation. Verse 4, the ambiguous instruction. You shall go in and uncover his feet and lie down. Well, what does that mean? I'm sure y'all, anybody who's ever read the Book of Ruth, if you've read it you read it for yourself and you're thinking, what in the world, what does that mean? What is that, literal? Is that figurative? How is that? What does that look like? So the scholarly wow factoid here, the euphemisms, the Hebrew word for place of the feet is margalot. Margalot. However, the word for feet is regel. The word for feet, regel, is often used in the Hebrew Bible as a euphemism for genitals. For example, Isaiah 7, verse 20. Well, you know what? Let's go over there and take a look at that. Isaiah 7, verse 20, to see exactly. I mean, we want to get the most out of this, folks. I want this to be the most in-depth study of Ruth chapter 3 and Ruth chapter 4 that you've ever had in your life. So Isaiah chapter 7 verse 20, in the same day the Lord will shave with a hired razor with those from beyond the river, with the king of Assyria the head and the hair of the legs, and will remove the beard. So, according to what we just read, I don't know, is this too much information? According to what we just read, this word that's used for feet, you know what? Let's take a look. This is because it doesn't seem to say feet there. It's like hair of the legs or head. Again, how do you interpret this? So Isaiah chapter 7 verse 20. Let's check out the different Bible translations just to see if any Bible translation picked up on that. And if they did, I don't know if they would even put it in their Bibles anyway, but let's just see what it says here. Okay. Comparing the Bible translations, King James says, the hair of the feet. Now, according to what we just read there, this word feet, regel, is a euphemism for genitals. New King James says the hair of the legs. New Living Translation says, well, New Living Translation puts it in very much of a totally different meaning, saying use it to shave off everything, your land, your crops, and your people. So it makes it into a figure of speech and nothing literal about that. Oh, look at this, folks. Look at this. Look at this. We found one. NIV says, in that day the Lord will use a razor hired from beyond the Euphrates River, the king of Assyria, to shave your heads and private parts, and to cut off your beards also. So we got that there in the NIV. ESV says hair of the feet. CSB, normally the CSB is actually pretty good, but this time it just says the hair on your legs. And same with the NASB, LSB. Even the Amplified didn't get that one. The NET there did. The NET there got it. RSV didn't. ASV didn't. YLT didn't. Well, I don't really expect the YLT, the Young's literal translation, to get it, because after all, literal can be good sometimes, but sometimes it's a little bit. Even the Darby didn't get it. And Darby, in spite of the fact that I disagree with Darby on many things, the Darby translation of the scriptures is actually not too bad. It's better than some of the other ones in my estimation. However, his theology is certainly not so good. WEB is what we just read. Hebrew Names Version didn't get it. Wow. All right. So it seems like just a few of them got it, right? So you got the NET and the NIV of all things. Okay. Well, we're learning stuff, folks. Next, it says the interpretation. Is this an instruction for seduction or a symbolic act? The text maintains deliberate ambiguity to create tension, the mystery. Given the high moral characterization of the protagonists, the intent is likely symbolic, a gesture of submission and a request for protection. But the risk of misinterpretation is high. Okay, back to the text. Verse 6, she went down to the threshing floor and did everything that her mother-in-law told her. When Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain. She came softly, uncovered his feet, and lie down. So this is a depiction of a more of a literal interpretation of it. Notes. Verse 7, Boaz's heart was merry, indicating contentment after a harvest feast. Verse 8, at midnight the man was startled and turned himself, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. It's almost like a comedy here. We got a romantic comedy here, folks, in the scriptures. Verse 9, he said, "Who are you?" She answered, "I am Ruth, your servant. Therefore spread the corner of your garment over your servant, for you are a near kinsman." Okay. We can't let that one go without talking about it. So in verse 9, so we get Ruth identifying herself and making her bold request. Spread therefore your skirt over your servant, for you are a near kinsman. The symbolism of the skirt, Hebrew Kanaf. This is a formalized request for marriage. So wait, did Ruth propose to Boaz? In the ancient Near East custom, spreading the corner of a garment over a woman signified claiming her as a wife and offering protection. See Ezekiel 16, verse 8. Well, let's go over there, folks, because we want to get into this as deep as possible here tonight. Ezekiel 16 verse 8. So apparently, what we have here is in this is the New King James right here. When I passed by you again and looked upon you, indeed your time was the time of love. So I spread my wing over you and covered your nakedness. Yes, I swore an oath to you and entered into a covenant with you, and you became mine, says the Lord God. In the footnote here, it says, or the corner of my garment. So there you have it, folks. Did you know? Did you know that Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 8, it corresponds with Ruth chapter 3, verse 9? Talking about the corner of the garment being spread over the wife. Let's check this out in, again, comparing Bible translations. Ezekiel 16, verse 8. All the different Bibles. So the King James says, I spread my skirt over you and covered your nakedness. New King James, I spread my wing over you and covered your nakedness. So we just read there. NLT, so I wrapped my cloak around you to cover your nakedness and declared my marriage vows. A little bit different picture there, but similar. NIV says, I spread the corner of my garment over you and covered your naked body. ESV, I spread the corner of my garment over you and covered your nakedness. CSB, so I spread the edge of my garment over you and covered your nakedness. I pledged myself to you. NASB, I spread my garment over you. So there's a footnote, says literally the hem of the garment. I spread my skirt over you, covered your nakedness, and NASB 95. All right, so I think we got a good idea there of what that is talking about. So back to the notes. Thematic link. This request beautifully echoes Boaz's earlier blessing in chapter 2, verse 12, where he praises Ruth for seeking refuge under the quote-unquote wings, Kanafayim, the plural of Kanaf, of Yahweh. You know what? I just thought of something, folks. I never thought of this before. I just thought of something I've never thought of before. Hold on a second. Where is that now? I know it's in the Psalms. You guys might be thinking the same thing I'm thinking. Hold on. Here it is. This many times, actually. Psalm 17, verse 8. Keep me as the apple of your eye. This is David's prayer to God. Keep me as the apple of your eye. Again, this is a figure of speech. Keep me as the apple of your eye, meaning protect me just like you protect the pupil of your eye. Hide me under the shadow of your wings. Now, so this could be, again, a figure of speech or a symbol of, of speaking about like a hen, maybe, gathering chicks under her wings. That could be it. However, maybe, what do you guys think? You think this is talking about more of a deeper relationship with God, to the point of like a marriage, like a covenantal vow to God, spiritually speaking, where he covers you with his wings, quote unquote wings, in the same way like covering Boaz would cover Ruth with the hem or the edge or his skirt. Psalms 36, verse 7, how precious is your loving kindness, O God. Therefore, the children of men put their trust under the shadow of your wings. And again, in Psalm 57, verse 1, for my soul trusts in you, and in the shadow of your wings I will make my refuge. Psalm 63, verse 7, because you have been my help, therefore in the shadow of your wings I will rejoice. Isn't that amazing? So could there be a link between that and Ruth chapter 3, verse 9? Therefore spread the quote-unquote wings. Spread your wings over your servant. In other words, so if the wings of God in the Psalms is talking about this, what does that mean for us? So that would be like God being a husband to us, in a sense, spiritually speaking, protecting, providing, right? Guarding our strength. Chipmunk says Ezekiel 16, verse 8 covers this too. Thank you for pointing that out, Chipmunk. And Cubert's wing is a nice way to put it. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Chipmunk, and thank you, Cubert's. Yeah, a beautiful picture here, isn't it? Do they get this in Bible schools? This request, so this would be in Ruth chapter 3, verse 9. This request beautifully echoes Boaz's earlier blessing in chapter 2, verse 12, where he praised Ruth for seeking refuge under the wings of Yahweh. Oh, this is so good, folks. I got to go over to Ruth chapter 2, verse 12 now. This is exciting. So, it's right, sorry, folks, right here in the book of Ruth, chapter 2, verse 12, the Lord repay your work, and the full reward be given, you by the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge. Wow. Chipmunk says, the bigger picture pointing to God and the comparison of his bride and protecting her. Isn't that amazing? It is. That's awesome. Thank you, Chipmunk. Yeah. Wow. I have never thought of it like this before. I've never thought of it like this before. How many of you knew this before? Just out of curiosity. Let me know in the live chat. Where, this is amazing. Back to our notes, Ruth is asking Boaz to become the human agent of that divine protection. Legal standing. She invokes his status as Goel, near kinsman / redeemer. Okay, let's go back to the scriptures and we'll continue to read. So we're back to Ruth chapter 3, and we'll start with verse 10. Okay, verse 10. He said, You are blessed by Yahweh, my daughter. You have shown more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning, because you didn't follow young men, whether rich or poor or rich. Chipmunk says, I did, but still learning other stuff I didn't. Awesome, Chipmunk. I didn't know that before. That's amazing. Thank you. Yeah, that's awesome. Hello, Amika. I'm live right now, by the way, on many different platforms here, all at the same time. Pretty much the top 10 platforms of live streaming on the internet. I'm pretty much on most of them, if not all of them. So our notes here on the bottom, for verse 10, Boaz interprets her actions not as seduction, but as an extraordinary act of chesed, or loyalty, or this would be kindness as well, as she seeks to continue her deceased husband's line rather than pursuing younger men. Verse 11, it says, Now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do to you all that you say, for all the city of my people knows that you are a worthy woman. Okay, so here let's note that Boaz affirms her character. All the city of my people knows that you are a worthy woman. All right. The terminology, Eshet Hayil. He calls her Eshet Hayil, woman of worth or valor. This is the same term used to describe the ideal wife in Proverbs chapter 31. Boaz himself was introduced as a Gibbor Hayil, a man of worth, in chapter 2, verse 1. They are equally matched in virtue. A match made in heaven. Back to the text. Verse 12 and verse 13. Now it is true that I am a near kinsman. However, there is a kinsman nearer than I. Stay this night, and in the morning, if he will perform for you the part of a kinsman, good. Let him do the kinsman's duty. But if he will not do the duty of a kinsman for you, then I will do the duty of a kinsman for you. As Yahweh lives, lie down until the morning. So the notes here, the complication, there is a kinsman nearer than I. Boaz insists on following the proper legal protocols. Okay, verse 14. She lay at his feet until morning. Then she rose up before one who could discern another. For she said, let it not be known that the women came to the threshing floor. He said, bring the mantle that is on you and hold it. She held it, and he measured 6 measures of barley. Oh, that'll be this one. 6 measures of barley, and laid it on her. Then he went into the city. Verse 16, when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, How did it go, my daughter? She told her all that the man had done for her. She said, he gave me 6 measures of barley. For he said, don't go empty to your mother-in-law. Then she said, wait, my daughter, for the man will not rest until he has settled this today. Okay, let's go to the notes. All of a sudden, it's pretty windy here, folks. I'm not. Hopefully, the power holds out. If I just disappear, you know what happened. It's the power. Okay, so pray that doesn't happen. The notes here at the bottom. The return and the wait. Boaz protects Ruth's honor by ensuring she leaves before dawn. So verse 15, the gift, 6 measures of barley. Significance, this exact measure is unknown, but it is generous. This gift ensures Ruth does not return to Naomi empty-handed, signaling that the process of redemption has begun. In verse 16, Naomi greets Ruth. So there is a textual variation here. The ambiguous question is, in the Hebrew Masoretic text, it literally asks, how are you, my daughter? This seems odd. Well, you know what? The Hebrew Masoretic text does seem odd every once in a while. It seems like more often than not, the Septuagint reads cleaner than the Masoretic text in many ways. So yeah, how did it go, my daughter, is what we have here in the Masoretic text. The Brenton Septuagint and the Peshitta also translate the sense rather than the literal phrase, indicating how have you fared or what happened. It is likely an idiomatic question about her status. Are you a widow or are you betrothed? Ruth chapter 4, the gate of justice. Chapter 4 shifts the scene from the private encounter at the threshing floor to the public legal resolution at the city gate, involving a complex interplay of ancient Israelite laws. Okay, so the first section is chapter 4, verses 1 through 6. Let's read verse 1. Now Boaz went to the gate and sat down there. Behold, the near kinsman of Boaz the near kinsman of whom Boaz spoke, came by. Boaz said to him, come over here, friend, sit down. He came over and sat down. Okay, note here that in the ancient Near East, the city gate was the center of civic life, the marketplace, and the legal court. Excavations at sites like Tel Dan reveal Iron Age gate complexes featuring benches where elders would adjudicate disputes. Verse 1b, the last part of the verse, the near kinsman happens to pass by. Divine providence implied. The anonymous kinsman. Boaz addresses him using a Hebrew placeholder, Ploni Elmoni. Ploni Almoni. Sounds like sounds like a Italian character out of a movie or something. Meaning Mr. So-and-so or John Doe. Ploni Almoni. I'll have to remember that. Chipmunk says, were you thinking about the corner mentioned? Sorry, Chipmunk, I'm not sure what the context is here. I'm sorry, I was a little bit late there. If you can let me know what the context of that is, maybe I can look into that. All right, thank you, Chipmunk. Ploni Almoni. Translation check. The WEB translates the sense "come over here, friend," and sit down. The Peshitta uses similar placeholder. The Brenton Septuagint offers a variant reading. You that are hidden, turn aside. Chipmunk says, back when talking about the skirt. Yeah. That'd be back in the previous chapter. Yes. Yeah. I was thinking about that when I was thinking corner, skirt, hem, all that kind of stuff is kind of synonymous. Yeah, so thank you, Chipmunk. So we do have a manuscript variation here. So the WEB from based upon the Masoretic text says, "Come over here, friend, and sit down," and the Septuagint says, "You are hidden." You that are hidden, turn aside. Literary significance. The man who prioritizes his inheritance over performing chesed is intentionally left unnamed and forgotten by history. Intentionally left unnamed and forgotten by history. I wonder if that's like Pharaoh, right? Some of these characters are seemingly intentionally unnamed. Okay, back to the text. Verse 2, Boaz took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, "Sit down here," and they sat down. He said to the near kinsman, Naomi, who has come back out of the country of Moab, is selling the parcel of land which was our brother Elimelech's. I thought I should tell you, saying, buy it before those who sit here, and before the elders of my people, if you will redeem it. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not redeem it, then tell me that I may know. For there is no one to redeem it besides you, and I am after you. He said, I will redeem it. The notes. Verses 3 to 4, we have the first offer. Boaz presents the opportunity to redeem the land belonging to Elimelech. The kinsman immediately agrees in verse 4. The law of redemption, the Geula, Leviticus 25:25, required the Goel to buy back, Goel to buy back family property to keep the ancestral land within the clan. Back to the text. In verse 5, then Boaz said, on the day you buy the field from the hand of Naomi, you must buy it also from Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead on his inheritance. Notes the second condition. Boaz links the land to Ruth. The fusion of laws. This is the legal crux of the book. Boaz fuses two distinct laws, the redemption of land in Leviticus chapter 25 and the levirate marriage in Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 5 to 10. Okay, so we have the redemption of land in Leviticus 25 and the levirate marriage in Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 5 and 10, which applies specifically to brothers. Boaz creatively applies the principle of the levirate, providing an heir for the deceased, to the duty of the redeemer, the goel. Verse 6, the near kinsman said, I can't redeem it for myself, lest I endanger my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption for yourself, for I can't redeem it. Notes. The refusal. The kinsman retracts his offer, fearing it will mar, impair, ruin my own inheritance, as he says. Economic rationale. He would spend his capital to buy the land, but the child born to Ruth would be the legal heir of Elimelech/Machlon. The goel would lose his capital of the land, gaining nothing for his own lineage. So the next section here is the transfer of rights and the blessing. This would be verses 7 to 12. Back to the text. Verse 7. Now this was the custom in former time in Israel concerning redeeming and concerning exchanging, to confirm all things. A man took off his sandal and gave it to his neighbor. And this was the way of formalizing transactions in Israel. So the near kinsman said to Boaz, buy it for yourself. Then he took off his sandal. Notes. Okay, so the comparison between Deuteronomy and Ruth. The ceremony in Ruth chapter 4 is significantly different than the levirate law, the Haliza ceremony described in Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 7 and 10. So in Deuteronomy chapter 25, if a brother refuses his duty, the widow is supposed to publicly humiliate him by removing his sandal and spitting in his face. Ruth chapter 4, this ceremony is a civil, amicable transfer of legal rights. The goel himself removes the sandal, symbolizing the transfer of the right to walk on the property. So that's what the removal of the sandal actually meant. Back to the text. So verse 9, Boaz said to the elders and all the people, you are witnesses today that I have brought all that was Elimelech's and all that was Chilion's and Machlon's from the land of Naomi. Therefore, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Machlon, I have purchased to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead on his inheritance, that the name of the dead may not be cut off from among his brothers and from the gate of his place. You are witnesses today. So that's verse 10. And the footnotes, okay, we got nothing on verse 10 on the notes. Verse 11, all the people who were in the gate, all the elders, said, we are witnesses. May Yahweh make the woman who has come into your house like Rachel and like Leah, which both built the house of Israel, and treat you worthily in Ephrathah, and be famous in Bethlehem. Let your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, of the offspring which Yahweh will give you by this young woman. And so they are praising or blessing the young woman there. The notes: the elders and the people witness the transaction and offer blessings, invoking the matriarchs Rachel and Leah. In verse 12, there's an astonishing parallel of Perez and Tamar. So it says, let your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. Historical / theological significance. Why invoke the scandalous story of Genesis 38? Tamar, a marginalized, likely non-Israelite woman, was denied her levirate rights by Judah. She took drastic, unconventional action, disguising herself as a prostitute to secure an heir. Despite her methods, she was declared righteous. This parallel validates Ruth's own unconventional actions on the threshing floor. Both women ensured the continuation of the Judahite line. Verse 13. Verse 13, so Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife, and went into her, and Yahweh enabled her to conceive, and she bore a son. The footnotes: the marriage and conception. The text emphasizes that Yahweh gave her conception. Verse 14, the women said to Naomi, blessed be Yahweh, who has not left you today without a near kinsman. Let his name be famous in Israel. He shall be to you a restorer of life. And sustain you in your old age, for your daughter-in-law, who loves you, who is better to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him. Naomi took the child, laid him in her bosom, and she became nurse to him. The women, her neighbors, gave him a name, saying, a son is born to Naomi, and they named him Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. The notes: the women of Bethlehem blessed Naomi, the thematic reversal. Naomi, who returned quote-unquote empty in chapter 1, verse 21, and quote-unquote bitter, Mara, in chapter 1, is now restored. The women declare that Ruth, quote, is better to you than 7 sons, unquote. The ideal number of children in the ancient Near East culture. Verse 17, the child is named Obed. Okay, so the next part is the last part of the book. This is verses 18 to 22, the genealogy of Perez. The line of David. Verse 18. Now this is the history of the generations of Perez. Perez became the father of Hezron. Hezron became the father of Ram. Ram became the father of Amminadab. Amminadab became the father of Nahshon. Nahshon became the father of Salmon. And Salmon became the father of Boaz. And Boaz became the father of Obed. And Obed became the father of Jesse. And Jesse became the father of David. What a way to end the book of Ruth. Note, the narrative concludes with a formal 10-generation genealogy, culminating in the final word, David. Conclusion, this genealogy reveals the ultimate significance of the story, the faithfulness or the kindness, chesed, of a Moabite woman, and the integrity of Boaz, guided by divine providence, secured the lineage of Israel's greatest king. Amazing. Any questions there before we go on? Before we move on from the Book of Ruth, because tonight will be the last night of the Book of Ruth, let's make sure we tie up all the loose ends, dot every I, and cross every T in our study of the Book of Ruth, and we'll talk about what we mentioned earlier on in the study, and that is another interpretation of the Book of Ruth. So I'm sure most Christians would interpret the Book of Ruth as a historical book that was written around the time, or written close to the time of Ruth, around the time of Judges, the Book of Judges. So that's a common interpretation. But there's also another interpretation and another dating of the book that dates the book much later than that, centuries later. And so let's read about that. We'll read about that interpretation and what that means, if it's true. You might say, oh, Christopher, why should you go in that? Because you don't even know it's true. Well, do you know the other part's true? Do you know that, honestly, do you know? What's your evidence? Let's have it all out on the table. Let's look at everything and have a good, well-rounded view of the topic here. So we got a fascinating and influential interpretation of the Book of Ruth. While the narrative is famously set, quote, in the days of, when the judges judged, unquote, a significant body of modern scholarship argues that the book was actually composed centuries later, specifically during the post-exilic or Persian period, roughly the 5th century BC. In this view, Ruth is not merely a charming story of loyalty, it is a sophisticated and powerful polemic. It functions as a counter-narrative to the harsh exclusionary policies enforced by the leaders of that era who mandated the expulsion of foreign wives. We will explore the historical context of this period, the crisis that Ezra and Nehemiah faced, and the evidence suggesting that Ruth was written as a direct response to them. The holy seed versus the faithful foreigner. Ruth as a post-exilic polemic. Number one, the historical context. The Persian period and the crisis of identity. The period following the Babylonian exile was a time of intense introspection and community reorganization. The return from exile, this would be around 539 BC onward. Cyrus the Great of Persia conquered Babylon and allowed the Judean exiles to return in 538 BC. They returned not to a sovereign nation, but to a small province of the Persian Empire known as Yehud Madinata, or Yehud. The central crisis, identity and survival. The returning community, the Gola, faced an existential challenge. How could they maintain their distinct religious and ethnic identity while living as a minority under imperial rule? The dominant theological view was that the exile occurred due to assimilation and idolatry. The primary fear was that this would happen again. Two visions of Israel. The Hebrew Bible preserves evidence of an internal debate during this time. The exclusionary approach, advocating for strict separation and emphasizing ethnic purity, dominant in Ezra-Nehemiah. The inclusionary approach, advocating for a vision where faithfulness to Yahweh rather than ethnicity alone determined inclusion. Seen in Ruth, Jonah, and parts of Isaiah. Number two, the exclusionary policy, the reforms of Ezra and Nehemiah. The books of Ezra and Nehemiah, who arrived in Yehud roughly between 458 and BC, portray a leadership deeply concerned with the threat posed by intermarriage. A. Ezra and the quote-unquote holy seed in Ezra chapter 9 and chapter 10. So Ezra chapter 9 verses 1 and 2, we have the crisis. Ezra is horrified to learn that the people have married foreign women, including Moabites. This is amazing, isn't it, folks? So this is something that's borderline contradictory. Ezra is horrified in Ezra chapter 9 verses 1 to 2. And in Ruth, it's just okay. It's just fine. So in Ezra chapter 9 verses 1 and 2, so he introduces a radical theology in Ezra chapter 9 verse 2, quote, so that the holy seed have mixed themselves with the peoples of the lands. Analysis. This concept of quote-unquote holy seed defines identity biologically and ethnically. Purity required strict endogamy, marriage only within the group. Ezra chapter 10, the radical solution, mass divorce. Ezra demands a national covenant to, quote, put away all the wives and such as were born of them, unquote. Ezra chapter 10, verse 3. Historical reality. This was a traumatic event. Ezra chapter 10, verses 18 to 44 lists the names of those forced to divorce their foreign wives and expel their children. B. Nehemiah's enforcement. Nehemiah chapter 13. Nehemiah chapter 13, verses 23 to 27, the cultural threat. Nehemiah confronts Judeans married to women from Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab. He notes their children, quote, could not speak in the Jews' language. Nehemiah chapter 13, verse 24. The loss of Hebrew was seen as an existential threat. Nehemiah's violence, his response is severe. Quote, I contended with them and cursed them and struck certain of them and plucked off their hair. That's found in Nehemiah chapter 13, verse 25. Nehemiah chapter 13, verses 1 and 3, the legal basis. The reforms explicitly invoked in Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 3, quote, an Ammonite or a Moabite shall not enter into the assembly of Yahweh even to the 10th generation. Look at that. Number 3, evidence for a post-exilic date of Ruth. Why do many scholars believe Ruth was written during this later period rather than during the monarchy or the time of the judges? Number 1, thematic relevance. The book directly addresses the most pressing social and theological debate of the 5th century BC, intermarriage and the inclusion of foreigners. Number 2, linguistic evidence. The style of Hebrew in Ruth contains certain grammatical constructions and Aramaisms, Aramaic influences. Aramaic was the lingua franca of the Persian Empire and increasingly influenced Hebrew during this period. I must say, folks, that there's some evidence here. We have to determine whether it's good evidence or not so good evidence, but that's a pretty good point. Number 3, legal customs as quote-unquote for a former time. The description of the sandal ceremony in Ruth chapter 4, verse 7 is explicitly noted by the narrator as, quote, the custom in former time in Israel, unquote, suggesting the practice was already archaic when the book was written. Number 4, the idealized portrayal. The peaceful pastoral setting of Ruth contrasts sharply with the violence and anarchy depicted in the book of Judges. This suggests a later author using an idealized past to address contemporary concerns. Number 4, the counter-narrative, the Book of Ruth as a polemic. If the Book of Ruth was written and circulated during this time of intense xenophobia and mandated divorce, its message is profoundly subversive. The protagonist, Ruth the Moabite, the author intentionally makes the heroine a Moabite, the very demographic explicitly excluded by Ezra and Nehemiah based on Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 3. The character of the foreigner, Ezra-Nehemiah, portray foreign wives as threats and sources of impurity. Ruth portrays a foreign woman as the supreme model of chesed, covenant loyalty. She is virtuous, Eshet Hayil, in Ruth chapter 3, verse 11, and faithful. A theology of inclusion. Ruth's declaration in Ruth chapter 1, verses 16 and 17 serves as the ideal model of conversation. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. The book argues that loyalty to Yahweh and the community transcends ethnic boundaries. The ultimate rebuttal, the genealogy. The conclusion of Ruth in chapter 4, verses 17 to 22, reveals that Ruth the Moabitess is the great-grandmother of King David. Wow. The wow fact. Yeah, the wow fact. This is a devastating blow to the exclusionary policy. If the holy seed cannot be mixed, and if Moabites must be expelled, then Israel's greatest king is illegitimate. The book demonstrates that God works through the faithful foreigner to bring about Israel's redemption. Amazing. Amazing. Wow. Mewa, I hope Ermias got a lot of... Ermias, if you're listening to this, you might have gotten more from this than than a typical pastor. So welcome, brother. And by the way, all of you that are listening to this, if you're new here, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're following. We do this kind of stuff every single day. We read the scriptures. We discuss the scriptures in depth, in detail. You love God. If you love to study the scriptures, you're in the right place. Okay. So, any final questions here before we close out for tonight? And tomorrow, Lord willing, we're ramping up for a storm in the scriptures, because once we get to the time frame, I'm going to do this chronologically. I'm going to read 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles chronologically, which means a lot of it's going to be mixed because 1st and 2nd Chronicles is a rehash, if you will, of some of the other content that we get in the other books. So we're going to be reading it all together, comparing it side by side. And I guarantee you're going to be shocked. If you were not with us, what was this now? Maybe 3 years ago? By the way, folks, we've been doing this. Thank you. I know there are a few of you that are listening to this. You've been with me for a long time. We've been doing this for going on 5 years. Virtually every day, for 5 years. We've been doing this live streams daily. So if you missed what we did there 3-4 years ago, you'll love it. You'll love it. You'll love it. Comparing the scriptures, you'll see things that you've never seen before. It's just absolutely amazing. You'll see things about First and Second Chronicles that you've never known before. I don't want to get into too much because I don't want to. We'll get to it when we get to it. So there's lots to talk about. Put it this way: the narrative of First and Second Chronicles is different. I'll just put it very mildly. It's different than what we have in the other texts. And we'll talk about how that could have been, what that means, which one is the more authoritative text. We'll talk about all that kind of stuff. All right, folks. So, yes, if you are a returning viewer, and if you're listening to this in the background, if you're hiding in the shadows, if you're returning and you're watching these live streams on a maybe you've been here a few times before and you say, I kind of like this, I'll come back. If that's you, consider not only just coming back every night, making a point of it, but also consider becoming a member of the YouTube channel and consider supporting on Subscribestar. It helps us to pay the bills and it helps to keep everything running here smoothly. We do have a lot of cost in regards to all of our everything, the hardware, the software, and everything else you can imagine in between several subscriptions for various services and such that we have to cover for, as well as the immense amount of time and effort and work that we put into this. So yes, please consider supporting if you are not already. You can do that by just clicking the join button underneath or clicking the link in the description on YouTube. It's also on Facebook. It's on BitChute and Rumble, to name a few. All right, folks. So we'll be back, Lord willing, tomorrow evening. Okay, hold on a second. I see a whole lot of stuff I didn't see here before. Sometimes my software here has a little bit of a hiccup sometimes. Hubert says, powerful. Mewa says he is listening. He said, thank you. Well, thank you very much, Mewa, and thank you. I got to remember your name. Sorry. Ermias, right? Ermias? Thank you. Ermias, yes, I got it. Blessings, Mewa and Ermias. Blessings multiplied to you and your families. Hope to see both of you back. We'll be back tomorrow evening. Oh, yeah, so by the way, before we go, so this coming Shabbat will be a typical Shabbat. We usually like to do something special on Shabbat and inviting anybody that may be listening to this. If you want to come on and share a testimony, maybe you'd like to come on and challenge something that we talk about, maybe something I said you'd like to challenge, you're welcome to do that as long as you're civil, respectful, and reasonable. If you're up to that, or if you know somebody that might be up to that, let them know for this coming Saturday. That'll be at 2 p.m. Eastern, and Sunday as well. We'd like to do something special, and we'll have the live chat wide open for that. Sunday afternoon, we're going to have our YouTube members video conference. Okay, I got something I'd like to share with you guys. So those of you who are members, if you can make it, it'd be good to see you there. That'll be Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern, Sunday at 1 p.m. New York time. The link is in the post. It's already posted on my YouTube channel under the post tab. So the link is there. You can use that link on Sunday to get in. If you're a member, it's like a Zoom meeting. If you've never been there before, it's like a Zoom meeting. So, for any member who wishes to come, you don't have to turn your camera on if you don't want to. It's nice. I mean, it's nice to see. You can talk. We can talk to each other. We'll talk back and forth and everything. It's nice to see who we're talking to. But if you're uncomfortable with that, that's fine. You can keep your camera off. I'm not requiring the members to turn their cameras on. However, it'd be nice to see y'all there anyways. So it's that. There's that. And then there's also our fasting, special fast, 3-day fast will start November 9th. It'll be 9th, 10th, and 11th. There's a 3-day fast. And then we're doing a special Daniel fast for 3 weeks in January, starting January 1st. Start the year off with a Daniel fast, which is a partial fast. But the first 3 days will be a full fast. We'll talk about that a little bit more as the time gets closer. As well as after Sunday, I will be talking about some of the things that I will be mentioning to the members as well on Sunday afternoon. All right, folks. Chipmunk says to Mewa, I get a lot from here. The deeper dives, comparisons, things I wouldn't even think of. I do hope he comes back and has some aha moments. Yes, I agree. I second that motion, Chipmunk. Chipmunk says, we have a good chat and some critical thinkers here too. Yes, we have it. You guys are just amazing people. You're awesome, amazing world changers. Seek the Lord says, thank you for your time, Brother Christopher. God bless you and all here richly and abundantly. See you tomorrow. Thank you very much. Seek the Lord. God bless you more. Blessings multiplied to you and your family. Mewa says, thank you, family. Amazing study. I have to go back and listen to yesterday's. Thank you, Christopher. Thanks again, Mewa. Blessings to you and your family. And Ermias. Al says, thank you. Thank you so very much. Always appreciate you, Brother Christopher, and enjoy each study. Shalom, everyone. Have a great night, and God bless you all. Thank you, Al. Appreciate that. God bless you more. Blessings multiplied to you and your family. Chipmunk says, thank you, Christopher. Good study on the Book of Ruth. I think I always took it as historical type with the lineage. I knew you would bring up some concepts that made me go, haven't thought of that. Yeah, well, yeah, for sure. Got to have something in there to stir a little bit of thought. That's for sure. It's good to think about it. Good to have something to look at and go, Exactly. Thank you, Chipmunk. Mewa says, sorry, I was driving. Okay, don't worry about that, Mewa. That's fine. Chipmunk says, never thought of before. Thank you for your time, Christopher. Many blessings to you, laughter, and new open doors. Thank you very much, Chipmunk. Blessings multiplied to you and yours. Blessings. Have a great night. Good rest. And Mewa says, I agree too. Thank you. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Awesome. See you tomorrow, Mewa. And Ermias, hope to see you again tomorrow. Or at least, if you can't make it tomorrow, as soon as possible. It's good to have you. You guys are awesome. You guys are world changers. Keep on keeping on. Keep on calling on him, and he will show you great and mighty things that you don't know. Jeremiah 33:3. Love you guys. Good health. Long life to you. I pray the Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face to shine upon you. Lift up his countenance upon you. And give you wonderful, wonderful shalom. Amen, amen. We'll see you guys tomorrow.